Hello folks, welcome to Tarot for today. It's been a while, but I'm in a position to offer some readings. I haven't done any shuffles on screen because we are on a tight schedule. So what I've drawn out today is only going to relate to those who are experiencing this particular thing right now. So I pulled the King of Pentacles upright, and this one is usually around the earth element. Okay, if you're into astrology, it's Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo. So you may be one of those, or you have one of those in your chart that is very influential over how you see things. So it's really around the person who's practical, the one who speaks through the physical and sees things in a more logical sense, right? It's got to relate to how it manifests here on the earth, and no spiritual woo-woo. It is around things like money. It is around things like resources. It is around things like comfort. That is the earth signs, and that is the Pentacles suit. Now, the king is someone who's sovereign, someone who people look to for guidance, someone who is anchored, or the anchor for the vision. So it's being anchored around materialism in a positive way. You know, this king here is surrounded by luxury, is available to all the good things in life, is able to master his ability around the most effective use of his resources. Obviously the shadow side of this one, it can be that they manipulate, and we're not looking at that at the moment. That's not the energy that's coming through for this particular reading. So if you're kind of looking at problems around money, problems around your home life, problems around stability, having the right resources, this reading is for you. We're looking at shifting out of this problem mindset into being able to master what you have available to you. You know, so there's this idea that you have to hit the ground running. You know, social media is very good at making you compare yourself to what everyone else is doing, because everyone else only really shows the highlight reels on social media. And so behind it you think, oh, look at this lifestyle, and it's very simplified, it's very reductive in the fact that it's only one moment in time, and it doesn't really highlight how much effort had been put into reaching that point. Does that make sense? So, you know, there's that saying, it took 10 years to be an overnight success, because once that person has reached that level of mastery, which is the king here, everyone zones in on that, but they don't look at how much effort and how hard it was in terms of internal dialogue, in terms of meeting other people on the field, in terms of choosing accordingly, because that's really where it's at. That's really what it's about. It's going, this is what I want out of life, whether that's stability, whether that's comfort, whether that's whatever you define that as. When you are clear about what you want, then everything you do is a choice that says yes to it or no to it. And sometimes you've got to make the hard decision and say, you know, that person isn't contributing to where I want to go. Well, that person is contributing. You know, that you have to make some hard decisions, and that's probably what gets left out. And if you're in this space going, you know, life is a bit of a challenge at the moment around this particular subject, then just recognize that and say life is a challenge. And from that challenge, you are able to elicit what it is that you actually want. Some of us are homeless, you know, living in a van, or, you know, couch surfing. Some of us are struggling to pay the rent and keep afloat. You know, some of us have all those things that make a life comfortable, but the stress is coming from struggling to maintain it. All right, and then there's other people who have systems in place that are paying them without much effort, but they put the hard yards in. So you got to decide where you are at in terms of that particular sequence, and decide, you know, do you want to go to the next phase, or are you just looking to be happy with the situation that you're in? We'll go to the next card to see what's there. We've got the Fox. So this is the medicine deck, medicine cards, and I was surprised actually when this one came out, because this is the Fox. The actual words are blend in, avoid being the center of attention, become protective when needed. Now, the way that you should be interpreting this particular thing, because what we're trying to do is resolve where you think you are, where you think you need to be, and what you should be letting go of in order to flow in a natural progression to your emotional well-being and financial well-being. The fox is considered the spirit animal who is very cunning, and you can take that in a good way or you can take that in a shadow way. Either way, the fox can utilize the situation to their advantage. If they're hungry, they will find a way. If they need to get out of it, they'll find a way. If they, all animals do this, but there's a particular way that the fox does it that this is asking you to focus on. Be very almost sharp in the way that you acknowledge where you're at and where you want to be. It's saying to blend in. We don't want to retract away from what it is that you want to achieve, but you do need to be considerate with your energy and where you place it. You don't have to suffer. You just need to change the way that you're looking at your situation. So if you really are struggling, just know if you call in the spirit of the fox, they're very good at surviving. They're very good. We don't want to be in survival mode all the time. You have that capability of being in survival mode. How can you take what you've learned as a survivor and place it into a different context? How can you take what you've learned and redirect it towards things such as, having more comfort in your life, having more money? Maybe it's not even having more, it's about letting go. It's about letting go of the expenses that are unnecessary. I feel like I'm talking to a range of different people, so I am covering all different bases, and you just got to take what fits your situation. You're an intelligent being, and the answers that you're looking for are generally underneath everything else that's taking up your conscious mind. Does that make sense? You're distracted by all these things. The problem becomes amplified. You're focused, you're zoomed right in on this one little pimple, and it's magnified. Now, I'm not minimizing the experience that you're going through. What I am doing is just helping you notice where you've zoomed in and where you could zoom out. That zooming out means that you are seeing that little pimple from a different perspective. It's not as big as what it's made out to be, and you're able to see it more in context to your situation. And so because you can see it from a different perspective, you can see a different path. So my readings are about trying to meet you where you're at and then encouraging you to notice what's going on for you and how you can make amendments. But you've got to have the focus of what it is that you're after. And when you're in survival mode, you're very much in a position that you can't see the forest from the trees, and you're scrambling. The energy's scrambling. It's panicky, it's overwhelm, it's fear, it's all these different things. And I guess in summary, it's showing reactivity, being reactive, being overly responsive to a situation that's unpleasant. So this is about finding your space, finding the calmness in that, and sort of removing yourself, detaching a little bit, seeing it from a remote point of view and saying, hey, what does this look like in a sequence? What led up to this, and what can we do going forward? But you've got to have that forward momentum in order to know where you're going. It might be just simplification. It might just be that you're looking for calm, and that's the goal first. Find your calm first, and then once you have that, you have clarity. So take what resonates. We're going to go to the next step. It did say become protective when needed. So you've got to be conscious of your energy. Conscious when you're fueling the fire of problem. Conscious of, who's distracting you. And why are you allowing it? Because sometimes when we really want something, especially if, you're at a different life stage where you're not struggling and you're not in survival mode, but you're in more of an abundance mindset, you've got to cut off the people that are draining your energy. And it can be a bit brutal saying it like that. It's making a choice to say, listen, jump on the bus or don't. But this is where I'm going, and in that decision, like if you are thinking of it as being on a bus, you're going to the destination of abundance and wealth or material comfort. The people that come on the bus with you are also making that same choice, but they're also making a simultaneous choice of letting go of what prevents them from having that. So you've got to pick the right people, the right environment, and the right situations. And it's pretty much a learning curve of you staying very anchored in what it is that you want and not being pulled off course, because that's what life is. And everything is information about why you want to chase a particular thing, or why you want to react the way that you do, or if you want to be more responsive and more conscious towards how you're spending your energy. Because listen, you only have a set amount. Everyone in the world has a set amount. Their consciousness is their account. And how you spend it is actually up to you and up to nobody else. You can co-create with people and fuel the vision, a shared vision, but it starts to falter and wobble when we get caught up in the nitpicky things. Ask yourself, how does this contribute to the end result? How is this showing up for me as abundance, or as safety, or as wealth, or how you've defined it? Because we all have our own definition of that, and sometimes it was defined for us as children, but we don't have to maintain that conditioning. We can let go. So I've got some affirmation cards here that I also pull at a random shuffle, and it's in line with what it is that we've just spoken about. I don't really know what these are, but let's go through them together. It says, my life works beautifully. So I want to speak on that, because no matter what's going on, it really is working beautifully. It's how you're showing up. It's your perspective. It's the way that you respond. It's the way that you react. It's the things behind that make you you. So life is working beautifully. If you're in the struggle mindset, it's changing the perspective. Again, it's zooming out. It's making the situation look smaller just to get a different perspective. See how it's sitting in context. I'm actually burping, so excuse me if this is coming up on the recording, but that's a sense of relief. It's a sense of removing blockages out of the solar plexus chakra, which is associated with the stomach, which is associated with digestion, which is associated with what you're consuming, and what you're allowing in your system. When you release, it creates space. When you have space, you have clarity. You see things differently. So it's about simplification of your situation. On the back, it says, everything in my life works now and forevermore. Okay, this is very simplistic because I want you to recognize that I'm not saying or minimizing your experience. What I am saying is that when you zoom out, you see things in a different way. And this is the key. I am available to those who want assistance in this area. So I'll just do a quick plug there because I do offer coaching, I do offer counselling, and they're both different ways in which you can approach the same situation. One, I consider counselling as an unpacking. If you imagine having a suitcase and you show up to my doorstep, we go through the suitcase and we unpack it. And that's what I'm talking about. You get that clarity because you've made space for it. You're throwing it out of the suitcase because you don't need it where you're going. But sometimes you need guidance to let go. Alright, because it's a safety thing. And it's conditioning. And it's definition as defined by your upbringing. And we're releasing that so that you can find your own answers as you define it, as you want it in your life. So that's counselling. Coaching is for those who are ready to take action, who are ready to be challenged, who are ready to have that guidance that gets them to where they want to be without dragging along a full suitcase. So if you're interested, feel free to comment below or contact me. I'd love to work with you. 2 cards had actually come out in this process, and so I take them as part of the reading. It says, my income is constantly increasing. I found that quite amusing considering I pulled the King of Pentacles. And on the back it says, I begin now today to open myself to ever-increasing prosperity. Rome wasn't built in a day. Everybody's heard that. What does that actually mean? It means that you need to build one brick at a time. You also need to remove the foundations of which you have been created up until this point. Like it's a matter of resetting. You can't build a house on top of a house. You have to actually either mow the house down or go somewhere else where there's a fresh start, a fresh place to create a foundation. Income is to do with time and value, right? Think about all the times you've consumed something. When you go out, when you're on social media, everybody's talking to you because they want you to buy the thing because they believe it has value that adds to your life. And if they say it the right way and it has actual meaning to your life, like say you need to dig a hole and you need a shovel, then you're going to respond to the person that sells the shovel, right? Because there's value in that. You have a need, you have a want, you need to resolve something. So when you're purchasing something, you're agreeing that that particular thing resolves your current situation. When we talk about income, usually it's around earning. Like when you go for a job, you are giving up your time, sharing your skill set in exchange for money, so that you can go and spend it on the shovel or the experience or getting your nails done or buying that tool that you need, whatever it is, right? You saw value in the offer. When you want to increase your income, you're either going to give up your time and work for it, or you're going to be on the other side of that coin and be a business and provide a service. Can you see the difference? One, they're still generating money, but from a very different perspective. And so when you move out of consumer mindset and into creator mindset, what you're offering is giving value to someone who needs it. And so ways that you can increase your income is by offering a service or a product or something that resolves a common issue in the market. Or you can go get a higher paying job, or you can get multiple income sources, right? It's all around value exchange. You just have to decide if you're going to give up more time or if you're going to use your time in a different way that serves a greater market. Do you understand what I'm saying now? I hope so. Prosperity shows up in different ways. You know, we can manifest in different ways. It's not always monetary value. So be clear about what your income is, right? It's coming in. What is it for? It needs to serve a purpose. And I think we've touched on that in this particular conversation or reading. You know, we've said it needs to go somewhere. We need to have purpose. And if you're cluttered and reactive, you're not creating from a conscious, focused, direct line to something. You're just trying to resolve the symptom. And so that's why my offer's here. I do these tarot readings. I also do coaching with the cards, counsellor, artist, to get you into the correct structure so that you are able to direct the life that you want to lead, and it's in alignment with the truth of who you are. So I really enjoyed sharing this with you today because I've learnt something as well. I would love to hear your comments and feedback. It is a timeless reading, so this is meant to touch on people who are feeling this particular thing today. Anyway, I shall sign off and catch you in the next reading. Bye for now.